Mic check. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Um, I just got off of the heels of my most recent conference, one that I personally was excited about because I think the topic of discussion on this multi-part series has reached its peak at this point. The next one is really geared for my fellow educators dealing with ed tech and screen time. And then the last one is really the smoke dealing with online grooming. So there's going to be a little bit of a pop, I suspect, there. But something happened in today's conference that has never happened before. Generally speaking, I have always had at least one generous donor to say, keep going, Hassan, with their dollars. We appreciate what you're doing and I value it. And so here's my little piece to the mission to help build it up. And on the one hand, I recognize that I have a small but strong community. And I try to be intentional about not being beggy, in part because of my own ego. I can admit that. But I also don't want to super saturate the community, asking every time, and a lot of my community members have been generous donors. Shout out to Miss Cleo, the very first donor, and shout out to, let me see, I can look it up right quick. Shout out to Shishi Miller, my largest donor. There are people who really do see the value. But generally speaking, when I make the call to action to say, will you contribute and support the mission, somebody does something. And this is the very first time that I have run a full conference, overtime even, and not a single person said there has been enough value that I will convert. And I feel some type of way. So I decided to make this vulnerable live stream. And the irony is quite thick because I see and have seen people who are in the content creation space, air quotes, crash out because of one reason or another. And I guess this is my version of a crash out. Because I now resonate with it. And I always have. I am an educator. That's what we do is pour. We pour out onto others. We are like a cat who just delivered a litter. And there are multiple babies on the nipple, all trying to get fed. That's what it's like being a classroom teacher. So I'm familiar with this. And at the end of it, the good ones at least are literally, physically, emotionally, mentally drained because there is a pouring. The highly skilled ones have a well-managed classroom, but there is always a pouring experience. And so I have to struggle with this. And I don't even know if I'm going to keep this up, but I feel like it is appropriate for me to share in the moment my vulnerable feelings. This has been a huge risk, leaving the safety of my classroom and attempting this content creation space in the midst of all the saturation that's out there, to offer my unique point of view and experience to the broader YouTube universe, but really to my community, fellow educators, parents of school-aged children, community members concerned about what's going on. And there's something going on. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that there's something going on in the state of education and among our youngest generation. And I made the decision over a year ago that I was going to speak up on their behalf because, as a matter of fact, one of my very first conferences was about Talking Tia, one of my heroes on social media, because she spoke truth to power. And you know what it got her? It got her an invitation out of the district. And so now she also is putting herself out there onto the marketplace. So there's always a risk when you are in the classroom working to improve the very system that you're a part of. Districts are liability minded, and any ill speak to what they're doing, especially from those with whom they have financial leverage, is a huge risk. So I made the conscious decision, for both personal and professional reasons, that I needed to leave the classroom so that I could speak genuine truth to power. And today I have clearly not provided enough value to the market, and I am not mad at it. There's a little bit of ego. I could be transparent about that, but my frontal cortex understands that people have options. They are generally quite used to receiving content for free. That's what YouTube does in exchange for their AdSense, in your time watching their ads. But because I'm such a new channel, and my real and genuine interest is not to lean on the AdSense and the monetization model, I would prefer to never turn on monetization, under the operating assumption that the community with whom I serve sees the value in what's going on and is willing to make a contribution. What I appreciate and what I've learned about this content creation space is that really there's not much overhead. You don't need a very large team. I'm a team of one. In order to create high quality content. I got this old camera. You can see how fuzzy it is if I move too fast. I have a decent mic. It was probably one of my first significant investments. My mixing board was donated by Jackie. What's Jackie's name? I want to give her a shout out. Jackie, you know who you are. She does high quality journalism down in Long Beach. She gave me this mixer, so I've been sort of piecing this thing together in order to provide the high quality. But that's at this point sort of the extent of the overhead expenses. I don't make Tesla cars. I don't even make pencils, so there's no raw material outside of my own experience, but I do work to deliver the highest quality that I can. And for anybody who is familiar with what's going on here at Educator's House, if you go back to some of my earlier videos, I think there is a clear journey of growth that I've been on, and the quality of these conferences has only improved over time as I have continued to practice my craft. But this is not a sustainable model. And I'm not surprised about that. I have been told time and time again by other content creators. I've spent many an hour on YouTube University looking at what it takes to really make this thing work, and have pulled, to the best of my ability, best practices from a lot of those who have done this before me. And one of the things that is no surprise is that you should expect about 18 months of consistent content creation before you have enough acceleration to overcome the force of gravity. And right now I am on the ground. I did not overcome the force of gravity today. And so I'm questioning myself. I'm questioning whether or not I'm providing enough value that the market recognizes. I've got 20 years in the game. I have got experience across the country and across a variety of schools. I have a unique talent as one of Les Brown's platinum speakers. As it relates to my ability to manage this microphone. He has taught me so many nuanced skills. Just the power of the laugh is something that I really hold on to, and a lot of techniques that make this thing look easy. But it is, the question is that I'm struggling with is, and I'll add this little layer too, and the skin that I'm in, I don't have enough privilege to ride this thing out for 18 months without any support, and then leaning on the algorithm and their AdSense. Number one. The other thing that I recognize is my particular lane is not sexy. I'm not doing celebrity gossip, shout out to O'Shea Duke Jackson and, mediocre tutorials and reviews and whoever the guy is that does the coffee cup pod. I'm not in that pop space. I don't do the reaction videos of shenanigans on the internet like the coffee cup guy does, like Poor Man's Podcast. These are all people that I study. I don't do, the politics and the news of the day. Shout out to Officer Tatum, big fan of his. And there's this other guy. I haven't seen him really producing content that much. But I'm dealing in a pretty narrow lane. And they say there's riches in the niches, and I get that. But my lane is controversial. It calls on a high level of accountability. Because I'm speaking on behalf of our young people, and I'm calling out the shenanigans that happen in education. And there's so much. It's a multi-front problem. And, there's others. Let me look at who I'm subscribed to. I'm a big fan of the teacher therapy. I'm a big fan of there's this other one that I watch. For some reason it's not pulling up right now, but there's a few like teacher channels that I watch, and they tend to be like comedians. They talk shop about crazy stuff that happens in the classroom, and there's all of that. In my mind, and maybe this is my crash out, in my mind, I am a bit unique in the space, primarily because what I do here is actually peel back some of these more serious layers. There's another lady, this white lady, what's her name? I'm a big fan of hers as well. I don't know her name, lady, but I really appreciate you. Blonde, white lady. She's a lawyer, and she talks about a lot of stuff, but she does like these deep dive investigations, right? So she's done all the study, and she's got a successful Patreon, and her community supports her. I'm a big fan of the Diary of a CEO. He does these very intimate conversations, 2-hour long conversations with real leaders in a variety of spaces, and but he was already independently wealthy. He had this whole tech company or whatnot. And so he's got an advantage. I'm coming out of the classroom, and the public school classroom at that, so what I decided to do was to sell my house in order to fund this runway of mine. And in the spirit of transparency, a lot of that money is gone because I don't have, I had to upskill a lot, and I had a lot of false starts along the way. But, like Finding Nemo, I just kept swimming, just keep swimming. It will fall into place if you hone your craft. Who's the guy? There's another guy, bald head, white dude with colorful glasses, the master of marketing, and he says quality is king. You might not need all those. You don't need all those bells and whistles. If you deliver the highest quality service, the people will come. So there's so many there's tension in the conflict between what I believe is a divine calling on the next phase of my life, to really be honest about what's happening in education, to be controversial, to have a little fun. I'm really good at facilitating conversation, and I have a consistent community. I'm not shitting on anybody who comes and shares their space, because time is, some would say, our most precious asset. It's the one thing that we cannot undo. So I stand in deep gratitude for my community. I'm not mad that nobody made a contribution, but I feel some type of way. I could be honest about that. And primarily because this is the first time that I've made the call to action, and the fact that I'm intentional about not doing it every episode. Every episode I'm begging, like my own ego won't let me get into a mode of like beggy, and I don't want to operate like Kevin Samuels. Shout out to you, sir. Rest in peace. He would run his live shows, and he would say, I'm not even going to start until I get a certain number of likes or a certain number of contributions in one way or another. My operating assumption is more resonant with the John Doe guy. He says, put the highest quality out there first and then make the ask. And so I use that as my model. I spend, and again, I feel like I'm complaining, but I am going to vent. I spent a lot of hours working through this. If you go to my channel, you'll see, especially towards the bottom, I have been working with my AI tool to get more engaging thumbnails, and I've been working with my large language model to get, the language together to help me write scripts. All of that stuff does take a lot of time. This is full-time work, and my mindset has been slow and steady wins the race. I have set out, I have taken business classes. I've done business statistics and figured out like what my break-even point is and how I can project out given my fixed costs and all of that stuff. And I've calculated, I'm pretty good at math, that I need just under $40,000 in the next 12 months. And I'm not using that to pay the rent. Like I said, I sold my house. I have a few things in order here, but in order to demonstrate that this is something that is worthy of pursuit over the course of the year, I have a number that makes sense, and it's a reasonable number. And along that journey, the community has been responsive, and I stand in deep gratitude, and it just serves to encourage me, like, keep on going, man. Yeah, it was $50 today, but it'll be more tomorrow. I have gone from, and it's funny because the content creators, they have told me that this was going to happen. I have gone from single digit views in some of my very early videos, but they say stay consistent, iterate, and your quality will invariably improve, especially if you have a strong point of view and you are in a non-saturated niche. Stay consistent. It will grow. Don't you worry about it. And I have taken that to heart. Stayed consistent, and I have seen some growth. Now, again, for those of you who know statistics, I have done the ANOVA calculation in my Microsoft Excel, and I have done the linear regression. And sad to say, my variables remain flat, right? I'm trying to get a linear variable, right? A direct correlation between, as I produce more content, I get more of the X outcome, more views, more conversions, more whatever. But right now it's really quite flat. However, anecdotally, going from, single digits, 9 views, 6 views, to dozens of visits, dozens of views, 12, 20. And now I'm relatively consistent at getting something in the 30s. Some will pop, some will fall below, but I'm kind of in that 30s. It's showing me anecdotally that there is growth, that there is at least a version of consistency, and that the algorithm is finding people who want to view what I'm offering. But I've had to make adjustments. My first mindset was do, highly produced content with the cut shots and the soundscape and the whole bit. But I'm too much of a perfectionist, so that was taking far too long. So I stepped away for a while, thought about it, reflected, or didn't, and just gave it space to marinate on its own, and have figured out that this format, going live stream, is actually best for me. I don't over obsess. I just stay in the flow. My community and I, we just make it work. And I could not do this without the community. Right? Because what can I say? The premise of Educator's House is to center the voice of others. I could do like I'm doing now, just me talking my talk, and I got plenty to say on all of these topics. But the real model here, the tagline is advanced professional development. The real model here is by centering the voice of those who are typically voiceless and typically unthanked, is an opportunity to say, hey, fellow educator, parent of a school-aged child who's really trying to help navigate our children towards adulthood in a radically complex social structure that we have never seen in any time in history. I see you, and I'm with you, and I'm ready to ask those critical questions and bring the highest quality conversations to at least push your thinking in a direction. And I stand in gratitude because the community has acknowledged you have upgraded my thinking. You've given me something to think about. You're pushing beyond the echo chamber and allowing this diversity of views to push me beyond my current context. So I'm getting a lot of that. And I'm just processing, right? So I have also been privileged to have time with business experts, people in the space. And these experts have helped me to appreciate, sir, if you don't have a product, you don't have a business. If you don't have a service that you can sell, then what this is really a passion project, and we can feel your passion, but you've got nothing to sell. This is not investable as it exists today because there's no product, there's no paywall, there's no service, there's no upsell. So it's not a business. And I get it. And honestly, I don't have no answers. I don't know what the sale is. Well, I have a model, right? I have a revenue model in mind. And maybe I'll get to that. But the point of this particular part of my process is I am figuring it out as I go. I have to acknowledge that. I come from the service industry, from the public service industry at that. You could say that I've been an agent of the state, right? So when I started my career in Orleans Public Schools, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a biochemistry major. So I was coming from the science content and had to figure out what pedagogy meant. I moved over to the Washington, D.C. area, and I taught both on the Maryland side and the Virginia side of the district. And that's where I really learned, I got my feet grounded in what it meant to go from teaching biology to teaching my students, right? Teaching Marcus, teaching Madia Kashmir, teaching Nafia Hamilton, right? I teach these human beings. It's just the context in which I teach is chemistry or biology. So I got my grounding there. And then I had the great privilege of teaching at a university level. So I moved to California, teaching at Loyola Marymount University, both as adjunct faculty and also as a full-time staff, particularly trying to help address their issue of African-American retention because LMU is very much a PWI, Catholic private university. They were bringing students of color in to push their diversity agenda, but they couldn't persist to graduation. So I was a part of that project, and I'm proud to say that we've made some significant progress while I was there. And then I don't even know why I'm telling you guys my bio. But anyway, you're talking about 2010, that was when my Catholic University, LMU, fell victim to the 2008 financial crash. And so what happened? I got squeezed out. My position had to get eliminated. No hard feelings there. But it was like, okay, so now what? So I met up with Les Brown and gave him whatever little coin I had and became a platinum speaker and thought I would go speaking at graduations and doing the public speaking thing, so I learned a lot of skills there. But as a solopreneur without much business acumen, it was difficult to chase after the contract, simultaneously servicing that contract, simultaneously marketing for the next contract. So it was a lot of boom and bust. And it wasn't consistent enough as a husband to protect, provide, and support the household. So the family made the decision, let's go to Savannah, Georgia, and go back into the safety of the classroom. So I started working there. Shout out to SCCPS, So I have been around and I have seen a lot, and I think I have something of value to offer to the market. So short story made long, after Savannah, moved back here to California, started working in schools here, had some charter school experience along my journey. But after more than 20 years in the direct student facing space, brother was tired. That's just the God's honest truth. I saw a few pathways. I'm a scientist. I love math. I'm constantly doing calculations. There were a few pathways that I saw. Either one, stay in the safe zone. It's the devil that you know. It's a broken system. Don't nobody want to hear the wisdom that I'm bringing here. So shut up, keep your head down, get paid, make your way to retirement. End of story. Be cool with a life of mediocrity. But I knew that was not sustainable because, as you can see, I've got personality. And it's hard for me not to call out bullshit when I see it. It's just a fact. So I would have either become that bitter old teacher, or I would have stopped teaching and, how do I say, reveled in the protection of the union and been not egregious enough to lose my job, but, not good enough to start making impact. And even though my relationship with my son's mother did not work out, I had him. He was in the elementary school, which was the feeder to the high school that I was working at. And I had to really ask myself the difficult question: do I want my son to journey through this school system and end up in my class? If I stayed, that's probably what would have happened. And in that particular class, in that particular setting, kids were more interested in learning the TikTok dance than coming and learning how to balance an equation. They wanted to have fights behind the bleachers more than they wanted to understand the periodic table. So there was this constant battle between what I was on a mission to do and the culture of that particular campus. And the answer was an emphatic no. I was not going to sit here and watch my son become a part of that culture. So, as my son and I moved out, we have our own place, and I was the king of my own domain. I decided to take a big risk on myself and leave all of that behind. At the beginning, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I didn't have some master plan, but I knew that it was not in my best interest or the school's best interest, and even not the students' best interest for me to stay in that space. I had reached a real breaking point and had to get out. I had to get out. It wasn't worth it. So I left and found myself on this app, this audio only app called Clubhouse. Shout out to Clubhouse. And during the pandemic, I was part of that space and was running rooms, and was a consistent part. So I decided to go back, mainly to just be a part of the community, right? And start having conversations. But people started coming and they were consistent. And I know how it is. I tried to run a business and be a school teacher at the same time. It's not easy, so I would have a big rushes of success during the summer when I had the downtime. But then when school came and I got to call parents and I got to deal with this and I got to grade papers and I got to, be school dad to some kids and I got a X and a Y and a Z, it was difficult to do that. So the community of educators said, man, thank you for consistently opening up these rooms. I would love to do it, but I can't, because I have other obligations. So there was like, okay, maybe there's a demand here for this space that I'm holding. Maybe there's a market. And so, I pushed, and I've slowly figured it out. I've gained some skills. I've learned some business. And here I am, right in the middle of, actually just a little bit beyond a goal that I set for myself. So when I started this version, this live stream iteration of what Educators House could be, a bit spontaneous, a bit unknown, right? Community driven. So you never know what's going to come out of people's mouths, people inappropriately promoting themselves or, using it as therapy sessions, like whatever it is. I've had facilitated conversations with, at this point in my career, tens of thousands of students. I've seen all sorts of personalities, from the spectrum from the low end of the spectrum, physically handicapped and, developmentally delayed, all the way to the other side of very highly gifted, people, the full spectrum. So I'm ready for virtually everything. And I got the power of the mute button. So if anybody goes a little bit too far off the rails, I don't have no problem kicking clowns, So I've got a unique skill set, And I'm applying it to the market. And so far, the market has been good, but I'm sort of getting to that point, which is where this is where the vulnerability comes back to the topic. I'm sort of getting to that point where I feel like maybe I have saturated my market. I've already had an inherent and built-in audience. They come consistently. There's give and take. Not everybody's there all the time. They're not getting paid to be there. So to the degree that they can, they look forward to the space. New people who come, they appreciate the space. So I know that there's value there, but I am not, as of this particular moment, I'm not convinced that there's enough value beyond the free, because anybody could just click off and go to some other room. Maybe a little bit less quality, maybe a little bit more entertaining, a little more toxic. But at the price of free, maybe it's worth it, to just go to some other room, just click and move along, go watch some other video and not this particular video for the whole hour, 2 hours, whatever, So I'm faced with this challenge, and at this particular moment in time, the challenge is more glaring. So what comes up? The question of faith. Was this really a divine download? Is this really a ministry, a calling? What do you call this? A devotion, whatever the word is for a calling, not just a career. If so, stay the course. Everybody called Noah crazy while he was building the boat in the middle of the dirt. I'm sure many people were hesitant walking through the Red Sea while the walls of water are towering above them. Stay the course. Stay the course. If this is divine, it will work out over time. And whatever you're going through now is small as it relates to the importance of obedience to a divine call. If, on the other hand, this is just ego, and I'm taking my skill set and applying it in a market that is not fundable, then perhaps I gave it the good old college try. And perhaps my son will look back and say, I'm proud of you, Dad, because you went for it, even if it didn't work out. It's almost like going on to your favorite game show, and you want to make your kids proud, but you lose. You're the first one out, and so now you become a meme and people make fun of you, so maybe I gave it the old college try. I can give myself a nice little pat on the back, and maybe I need to put my tail between my legs, accept reality for what it is, because bills got to be paid. The landlord don't really give a damn about my story and my passion for education and my concerns about screen time or the influence of artificial intelligence or none of that. He want the rent on time. The utilities need to get paid. Baby got to eat. These things need to get done. So maybe it's about going back into the classroom. I had my time. Go get a job, man. I really don't want to go back into the classroom, so I'll have to find some other type of work. But I feel like I have been given some talents, and as of today, I can at least confidently say that I did not bury those talents. But when the master comes, I'm pulling stories from my favorite book. When the master comes and says, what have you done with the talents? The other two dudes were at least able to say, I took your talents, I invested them, and here's the return on your investment, right? It was the guy who said, I buried the talents because I was afraid I was going to lose it. So here's the talent that you gave me. I give it right back to you. I at least I can say I didn't bury the talent. I put myself out here, made myself vulnerable, demonstrated my skills, and the market is speaking. Now, to the degree that the market is speaking, I can say that even though I set myself a goal of $40,000 over the course of 12 months, and I am 10% of the way there, and most practically speaking, because of my false start previously, I've been at this consistently for approximately 35, 40 days. So to be 10% of the way there, 40 days in, which is about 10% of a year, right? 365 days, 36 days would be 10% of a 12-month year. So you could say that I'm on track, you know. But one of the decisions that I made was that I was not going to use the investments that folks have given for personal gain. Right. So I'm not interested in taking child support and going out to buy some new shoes, get my nails did, go out to the whatever, child support money is supposed to be for the child. Educators, house investors is supposed to be for the house. So I have not spent a single dime as of today. And I was really excited. I was like, don't ask, because at the live conference, you're going to ask, you're only $200 away. If you go to the site now, I don't know if I don't even know if somebody's watching this. I'm totally just crashing out, but I'm looking at it. I don't need to share it. If you care, I'll put the notes there in the link in the description somewhere on one of my videos so you can find it for yourself. I'm at $3,686 from zero, So to the degree that enough people, I'm not on the back end, I'm just looking at the front end, but 27 people have given a grand total of $3,686. That is nothing to shake a stick at because, I don't, like I said, I don't make pens, I don't make pencils, I don't make staplers. I'm having high quality conversation. I'm creating community, I'm creating space for people to be seen and recognized in a way that protects them. That was another real intentional feature, if I may digress in my vent here to myself. The good thing about the audio app that I use, all those voices that you hear are from this live audio app. And the audio app allows people to come up with their own avatar and come up with their own name. So there could be a teacher who's actually in the classroom who sees, the shit for brain system that we have in front of us. But here they can call themselves, the Sunday Slayer, and they can have a image of themselves as, a flying elephant and lend their voice. So there's this pseudo anonymity on the audio app that I've chosen to create community in that allows them to speak truth to power without necessarily having their name tied to it. And because I'm streaming through YouTube, on the app, you have the profiles, and when you're there, you can kind of check people's Instagrams and kind of vet their identity. But here, the YouTube community doesn't have any of that. What they hear are voices of people who are being courageously honest, who are speaking truth to power, who are struggling through big ideas. And so it's in my head, and maybe that's the problem. It's all in my head. This is a ideal combination of factors that can bring the community of educators who have something to lose because people have lost their job posting stuff online about the state of education that's critical of the state of education, even though they're trying to improve the very system that they're a part of. So here in this space, I don't work for the state no more. I work for you. I work for the market, So for my perspective, I don't have a problem because it's the market that supports my lifestyle, the longevity of this business. And so they're protected. I'm not beholden anymore. And so it was a sweet thing. The technology was there. It took me a while to figure it out. Breathe. So it's been quite a journey. And just like my experience in the classroom, there is a heavy pouring to be fully present to the conversation, to know when to pivot, using all my skills and talents as a educator, as a facilitator of conversation, as an empathetic person, when to hold space for somebody who's really wants, like me right now, wants to just process what they're going through, to affirm those who have radical ideas, but also to call cap when I see it, it's a dance and it's an energy. It's an energy pouring. So part of what this means is that I have to really protect my own energy, so I have to engage in a lot of healthy self-care to build myself up because I go live 4 times a week. And, 3 of those times is at 4:00 in the morning. I'm on Pacific time. So I have a morning show called Homeroom. If you're watching, you probably already know. And Homeroom is it's a morning show and it's very early. So that has affected what time I go to sleep. My diet, I have to be very conscious of my diet. I have to be very conscious about exercise. I have to be very conscious about taking intentional breaks, because I can sit here as a solopreneur. I can easily sit here for 12, 13, 14 hours sometimes, putting it together, pushing the algorithm, pushing my thoughts, figuring out where I'm going, let alone the business plan, and shout out to Atlas, shout out to Yolanda. Both of them have given me pages, right? They've gone to their GPTs and have given me pages and pages of like business plan language. And I haven't even had a chance to read it. So it's like those sorts of things. And so next week, I'm going to spend the time reading and figuring it out and pushing it together. Les Brown would say, leap and figure out how to fly on the way down for aspiring speakers. If you're good enough and you're passionate enough, go for it and you'll figure it out, And so I'm going for it and I'm figuring it out. But I don't have, what do they call that? The complexion of connection, I don't have big savings. And so there's a practical demand, a ceiling of practicality through which making it to 18 months, that math doesn't math. So I've got to figure out a pivot. What does that look like? Maybe it's downgrading my space. I'm in Los Angeles, California, and it has been for primarily personal reasons, in particular, in proximity to people that are important to my son, to put it safely. But I'm not in that place anymore. My personal expenses go beyond, and the business just isn't there. So today, and if I had just gotten, one contributor, $20. Hey man, slide a little. Let me just fold it. You know how we used to do back in the day. I don't know who's watching this, but back in the day when we wanted to pass money to somebody, we would fold the money neatly into our hand and we would shake their hand, and then they would feel the money, and it'd be a smooth transition, that kind of thing. And so, it would just serve as a signal. No, it's not going to pay my rent. Not even close. I can promise you that. But it would be a signal. Keep on swimming, bro. I see you. Here's my little coin to the mission, Go boy. Do it. Keep going. But today it didn't happen. And I laid out a good case. Somebody spontaneously actually came onto the mic and testified on my behalf and talked about, the effort that I put forth and all of that. And it just didn't spark. It didn't convert. There were new people in the room who had never heard. And I get it. Sometimes you need to have 7 touch points. So says the wisdom of the people in the space, to get someone to get to the yes, So new people, hey, I get it. I'm not mad at you. Others were in the room that had already contributed. And I get it there too. Hey man, you already got my $50. I already dropped $100 on you, bro. Like, I'll see you next year. So I get that. Stand in gratitude for them. There's that community who says, listen, man, I love what you're doing. I appreciate the mission and all of that. I just don't have it. I don't have no extra money to give. So I'm not a cheerful giver. I totally understand that. But given the number of people that were in that space, is there not one, is where my struggle is. It's where my heart is hurting a little bit. If I pull out all those other groups that I can reasonably say, I totally understand. Of whatever that small group that's left among you, my community members, is there not one that says, hey man, you're worth a cup of coffee? What I experienced with you today is worth a cup of coffee? Not today. Not a single one. And so now it's given me an opportunity to step back and say, okay, is it fear or is it faith? Is it logic or is it just, unbridled passion? And so, the calculations are calculating. So I find myself on this spectrum. There's fear and faith. No, this is not going to work. Believe in yourself. Keep on pushing. I can faith myself to homelessness, according to statistics. And I can fear my way towards mediocrity. And then I've got this side of the spectrum, right? Which is logic versus passion. Run the numbers, sir. Maybe the community is not large enough. Maybe the YouTube university, there's just not enough people that would be willing to be converted. So, have you done the numbers? Let me speak to myself. Have I done the numbers? Have I really pushed this out? Am I really delivering not just passion? I'm just talking a whole lot about what I know, but am I actually doing business? So somewhere along this spectrum, this quadrant, I find myself, and I just don't know if I'm a wandering generality or if I'm actually navigating myself towards something that could be good for the group. That's really ideally suited for the community of people who, I believe there's a community of people who are thirsty for this kind of content. So what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I don't know. I don't want to be like Jonah in the whale and just refuse to listen to the still small voice, refuse to listen. I'm so committed to this, right? I'm tunnel visioned, and I'm just going to do it my way, Frank Sinatra way. Or maybe there's a pivot, right? Maybe, as I mentioned, maybe there's a downgrading here, so that I can keep pushing. I have heard the testimony of creators like me who have had to, move out of their place and go back to their dad's house or, wherever, downgrade, but they refuse to lose, and they push. And now they're getting awards, and, they're the top creators, and they got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers, and, the algorithm loves them. And they get the AdSense, and they have the merch, and they have the course that they created, and all of that. But to get there, they had to go through some things. And I'm going through some things right now, practically, but clearly emotionally, emotionally as well. So I don't have any conclusion. I didn't write any notes. I don't have a point. I'm just here sharing the vulnerable space in which I find myself. And I can't stop. That's what I'm present to right now. Consequences be damned. I'm going to keep pushing. These conversations need to happen, even for as long as I have an internet connection and electricity. I won't stop. I refuse to lose. I don't know what is going to happen. But I acknowledge that I am ideally suited to have these kinds of conferences and conversations. I know that. So I'll be back tomorrow. All of that to say, I've been up here for 48 minutes, bitching and moaning, just to say I will be here tomorrow, 4 o'clock in the morning, homeroom, pushing the conversation forward. Tomorrow we're going to, over the course of the next week, we're going to be looking at educational technology. I don't even have a speaker lined up for the ed tech space. I have a very good friend of mine. He was willing to participate. Check him out. His name is Cedric Scott, author, technologist, great guy. But he's out on family vacation, so he's not available. I was on LinkedIn thirst trapping for speakers, and someone that I know somebody who's in the ed tech space. They said they would make a soft, warm introduction. I sent him a connection request. I'm not going to look at it right now, but last I checked, he didn't even respond to my request. I don't even know if the bro man's still on LinkedIn, so we're going to see how it goes. I have not even prepared, y'all. If you look at my channel, you're going to see it's a whole bunch of that bright yellow homeroom. All those are intended to be replaced with like the cool artificially intelligent thumbnail, the scroll stopping thumbnail, and I go to my GPT, give me a script that's compelling and uses like Zeus energy of authority and the goddess energy of nurturing, and the aspiring and inspirational energy, and mixes in a little fun, right? So I give my GPT all this context, and it gives me this great script. Takes prompt after prompt and fine tuning and fine tuning. And no, that wasn't good enough. It's still ringing hollow. Here's a script from somebody else who gets it right. Take this and then figure it out and now apply it to my context, right? It's a lot of that kind of stuff. And, anyway, I say all that to say I have no idea what I'm doing tomorrow morning. I'm not prepared to even embark on the journey of ed tech. The question that I want to struggle with is all screen time the same? Is the fact that I'm doing screen time in a school for 5 hours comparable to me sitting on my phone and doom scrolling for 5 hours or playing my little online game for 5 hours, right? Is there a measurable difference, or from a neurological perspective, is it all the same? So that's kind of what I want to get into. I want to make ed tech accountable for this issue of screen time and our kids' development, because they're totally on gamification, right? I know I'm doing the research right now, but they are very much using gamification models, the addictive models, the ding ding ding, and the prizes and the leaderboards, all of that. And I'm a huge proponent of gamification. I just didn't expect in my mind that it would go this far and it would be applied in the kind of context that we see it applied in now. No textbooks no more. Everything is online. The screen. I think it sets an environment for kids to easily transition to their personal screen and to get lost into that. So I think it's a segue drug, if you will. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll be back in the morning. I don't have the quit in me. I learned that a long time ago. I said it maybe today or somewhere recently. I was not allowed to leave the kitchen table until the meal was done. My sister can testify. I will eat my plate and your plate because, we gonna finish. We gonna finish this thing. So I'm glad that I processed that. I don't know how long this is gonna last on the channel. But this is the state. This is what I am very present to, is this challenge of my own faith versus my fear, the logic versus the passion. Am I heading in the right direction? Am I doing the right thing? Maybe, my talent as a speaker and a facilitator of conversation, I could totally do this in pop culture. I could totally do this in smoke rooms and, blow up the spot and get memes from Instagram and make fun of people. And, I would probably be way more popular, but that's not what I'm called to do. So, what's that story? Circle the city 7 times. Don't say nothing. Just go around the city once a day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, blow some horns, blow some trumpets, and you'll see the walls crumbling down. Sometimes God has you do some unusual things that don't make no sense. But in the end, it comes together in divine order. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe what I'm going through doesn't make sense. I'm compelled to see this thing through. I believe that it will grow, but right now it's very painful because I have to face the reality that the money's not there yet. The money is not there yet. So just keep swimming, my boy. Just keep swimming. And I guess I'll find out. I'll find out one way or the other, but I'm not going to find out because I quit. That's what I think the conclusion I'm coming to. I'm not going to find out whether this is what I'm really supposed to do because I gave up and convinced myself. I told myself, rationalized it, that I need to go get the bag. Let me go get the safety of a check from somebody who's richer than me. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am taking my own fate into my hands. Beholden to the market, of course, to those who might be even listening to this or watching this. Yeah, the market is a better boss than anybody except Bernadette Ball Oliver. Anybody who remembers me from, where was BBO? Was she in Savannah, Georgia? Must have been. I believe she was in Savannah. Yeah. Bernadette Ball Oliver was quite possibly my best principal of all all my bosses, my direct reports, principals, and department chairs, and all of that. BBL, she had it. She had it figured out. I respect that lady a lot. So if any of my former students or whomever who might know Bernadette Ball Oliver, former principal over in Savannah, Georgia, let her know that I appreciate her and all that she did to develop me as a professional. Um, anyway, I think I've said what I need to say. I think I am complete. I'm gonna go take a walk and finish sipping on this clear water that I'm privileged to have.